This episode of the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour is sponsored by the law offices of Alfred Guillaume III, a boutique criminal defense firm located in Washington, D.C. The firm specializes in defending federal criminal cases. You can learn more about the firm by visiting our website at guillaumelaw.com. That's GUILLAUME law.com. Happy New Year and welcome to 2025. On this month's episode, I had the privilege of hosting criminal defense attorney extraordinaire Warren Brown. When I first started my career as a prosecutor in Baltimore almost 20 years ago, he was the attorney that no one wanted to face in court because all he did was win. Warren was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, attended Carnegie Mellon University, and graduated from Boston University School of Law in 1977. He worked as both a prosecutor and a federal defender before opening his own law practice in 1988 in Baltimore. In private practice, he quickly rose to superstar status, notching some big victories early on in his career, including his representation of Dontee Stokes, a man accused of the attempted murder of a Roman Catholic priest that had abused him as a child. Warren tells us about that case and other adventures he's had during his storied career in the law. And if that wasn't enough, he and I also discussed his connection to actress Jada Pinkett Smith. All that and more in this month's episode. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. I'm joined here by the man, the myth, the legend, the Warren Brown, criminal defense attorney extraordinaire, who drove all the way down from Baltimore at the last minute to sit down for this interview. So before we get into anything, I just want to say I'm thankful for you to be here and so happy that you're here in this chair.
No problem.
I really do appreciate it. Now, I want to kind of give our listeners a bit of a background on how I know you and of who you are for the 5% of the population that doesn't know who you are, right? You've been practicing law for over 40 years.
That's correct.
You're a Baltimore native son, Baltimore, Maryland, and you've been in the criminal law game just as long, right? About 40 years?
That's correct, yes.
Wow. And I know you because I used to work in the city courts in Baltimore. I was a prosecutor at the time. Mm-hmm. And when I got to the court, that would have been, it's almost 20 years ago.
Time flies.
Time flies. They told me, you were a legend. I don't know if you knew how much of a legend you were.
No.
But they used to tell me, they said, if you have a case with Warren Brown, work it out.
Wow.
Don't go to trial against him. They say you're going to lose.
Thought it's still prevailing. Got to get out of some trials.
Right. They say, do not go to trial. That was the word on the street in the prosecutor's office.
That's amazing.
They said, work it out. They said, you and Ken Ravenel were the two guys.
Ken Ravenel, yes.
Were the guys that we did not want to face, especially as young prosecutors.
Right, I got you.
Because y'all was whooping butt.
Right.
And, I don't know if you remember this, but before we even kind of get into the war stories, but we had a case together. We actually, you probably don't remember, but I'm going to refresh your memory. It was a trial. It was a full-blown jury trial. It's a prostitution case, right? I don't know. That was the only prostitution case I've ever had. Do you remember that?
No.
Right.
You remember what courthouse or what judge?
It was Judge Dory.
Okay.
And it was Courthouse East.
It was the East, okay.
Right. It would have been going on at least 15, maybe more than that years ago. And you won. I'll just go get that.
What she look like?
And that's the funny part of this story. I don't remember. I wouldn't say her name anyway. It was a woman who was, when you think of prostitute, it wasn't the kind of person that you might think of. Street prostitute.
Right, I got you.
It was a high-end person.
Right.
She's actually a beautiful woman.
Right.
But I remember she came to court barely dressed, okay? And you said to me at the time, you says, you know what, man? We're not having trial today. You said, she got to go home and put on some damn clothes.
Wow, yeah. I listen, that just reflects the fact that there's been, a lot of tire left on the road, and so I don't remember that. I should remember something like that, right?
Honestly, I remember because it was the only case I had with you that went to trial.
Right, I got you.
And in my mind, it was a open and shut case.
Right.
she solicited a police officer who was undercover. She agreed to have sex for money. That's it, right? It's prostitution.
Right.
But somehow you convinced the jury otherwise.
Yeah. Well, listen, every case is different, but one of the dynamics of trying the case is just trying to get a sense of, how important it is to the community and whether it's important or not to jurors. And something like that, I can imagine. They probably believed, yes, exactly, that's what she was doing. But who cares? One of those, right?
But you know what you said in your closing argument. I never forget this. I swear to God, you said, I can't remember your whole argument, but at the end was like, let's just let this lady get on with her life and go home. Mm-hmm. And like 10 minutes later, the jury came back not guilty.
Yeah, right. And see, so that's just one of those appeals to the jury. Like, listen, even if she did do it, I mean, really, the world's not coming to an end. Let this lady go ahead on about her business, get on with her life. And so, you just try to find, that those feelings that might be important to jurors. That's why, as a trial attorney, it's good to be a people person, right? Especially if you're going to be trying jury trials, especially criminal defense or even prosecutor. Just having a sense for people, right, and what may or may not be important to them, and some concern about them.
And that's what they don't teach you in law school.
No.
And it had nothing to do with the law. No. Your last statement to the jury, but it resonated with me to this day.
Right.
And it must have resonated with them.
Right.
Because they found her not guilty.
Yeah, and see, also, that type of appeal makes them feel good, right? They can find her not guilty and go home feeling, we gave her a break, let her get on with her life, as opposed to finding her guilty and they're like, well, we don't know what's going to happen to her, right? But it allows them to feel good, and it's no great cost that's been paid because it was like a prostitution case. It wasn't a murder case. Now, a murder case might be a little different, right? But on something like that. But let me also say this: I think many times we take too much applause and credit for our wins and too much responsibility for our losses, because
that's a good way to put it. Right.
A lot of these cases, they have an aura of their own, and you could put your best foot forward, but it might just be going against the grain. Done a great job, but it's just kind of like going against the grain. So, I mean, there's a whole dynamic in terms of being in these courts and trying these cases, from prostitution to capital murder.
So you've been practicing law for 40 years, which means that you would have graduated from law school in the 70s, right?
Yes, I graduated in 77, so it's actually been 47 years.
Wow, almost 50 years.
Almost 50 years, isn't that something?
I was born in 77.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to make you feel any kind of way,
no,
but
that's okay. No, I don't mind.
And I'm the older guy. Like amongst when I meet other lawyers and stuff, they're like, "Oh, you born in the 70s?" I was like,
yeah. Well, for me, it's a peeling back of the onion, right? When I came up from Memphis, and I grew up here, I was still, in terms of the legal profession, I was an outsider. Most of the people had gone to school in Maryland, or were from Baltimore and had gone to school in Maryland, or even if they were from outside of Maryland, they'd gone to school either UB or University of Maryland. So it was kind of cliquish, right? And so I was kind of like an insider, even though this is my town. I'm still kind of insider coming back here. And then I think about all those legal giants, man, those that were over top of me. These guys.
Like who? Who you thinking
about?
Well,
all the many of the judges, like Judge Watts, Judge Hargrove.
All folks in Baltimore City.
All in Baltimore City, right. Judge Mitchell.
Clarence Mitchell. His courthouse named after him, right?
That's right. So I mean, I was a infant. I was a tadpole, right, and looking up. And then in the blink of an eye, I got all these young guys looking up to me. Right. And I swear, I don't know where the time went, right? And so it's kind of amazing, because I also know, I used to keep a list of the lawyers, trial lawyers, criminal defense lawyers especially, but some judges as well, prosecutors, but not many, who, had come and gone. They had passed away. And then I stopped keeping a list because I didn't want to forget these people.
Right.
And then I stopped because I figured at some point my name's going to be on that list.
All of our names
let me leave this alone. But the peeling away of the onion, to the point where, I mean, it amazes me. I still have to stop and say to myself sometimes, wow, you got all these young guys, they looking at you like, you walk on water or something. The same way you used to look at folk, some
When I came
30,
in, I'm
40
telling
years
you,
ago.
man, it was you and Ravenel,
Right.
but we saw you more in the
Right.
city courts.
That's right.
Like, and for those who don't know, I mean, people look at The Wire, it's their kind of, if you don't know anything about Baltimore, you look at The Wire as like their introduction to Baltimore. We know, I'm not from Baltimore, but I spent time there. It's a city rich in African-American culture.
Oh, it is.
I mean, Cab Calloway, Billie
yeah,
Holiday's
man.
from there, Thurgood Marshall.
Right.
I mean, these are people that are giants in our culture.
Absolutely.
And extremely important. And that's just a few.
Right.
I mean, and Warren Brown is another one of those people that comes from this
well,
culture.
you know what, and maybe that is the case, but and if it is, I mean, I cherish it, and I try to honor it, and not put myself in a position where I bring any disrepute to the professionals. When I'm on TV, which is oftentimes because some of my cases elicit publicity, media publicity, I always say a little prayer to myself before the cameras turn on. Just God, let me speak in such a way and provide some pride in the community from which I hail, so that they can look and say, "Yeah, I'm proud of that brother." And so it's important to me.
That is so awesome to hear. Because another thing about you, and I'm sure this is intentional on your part, is that you make it your job to make sure that other lawyers, young lawyers, but particularly black lawyers, are doing okay. I have been in this business for about 20 plus years now, and I don't regularly interact with you. I don't see you much anymore, but you still send me cases.
Yeah.
I literally today I just got a case from you that somebody had called me and said I was referred by Warren Brown, and I've heard that story among so many lawyers.
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur. You eat what you kill, but you have no problem saying.
Right.
Go ahead and
Absolutely.
give this to the next man.
Absolutely, share the wealth. And also as a part of it is karma. I believe very much in karma. I'm not into many of the religions, but karma to me is important. You do good, you get good. You help somebody out, it comes back to you. You hurt somebody, that comes back on you as well. When I was, I was with the Federal Public Defender's Office after being a state prosecutor, and I was, looking to get into the private practice. But the most of the criminal defense attorneys were white, and large percentage of them were Jewish, and they had it on lock. They had it on lockdown. Right. All these brothers coming through, they had it on lockdown. There were a couple lawyers, just a couple black lawyers who were making some inroads. And so when I tried to come out of the federal PD into that, I had state prosecutorial experience, federal defense experience. They were shutting the doors. No one would open the door except one guy, Roland Walker. He gave me a shot, man.
Roland Walker's I remember him.
Yeah, Roland was a Jewish guy who was criminal defense. His firm did other stuff, but he was a criminal defense attorney. He was very, very, very good criminal defense attorney. And so, he gave me my shot, and it just happened to be that was during the.
Around what year was that?
That would have been in the mid '80s. Okay. And I went out on my own from him in June of '88, and in the '90s, never looked back. But in part because about that time and in the '90s, man, it was a lot of drug money on the streets. Mm-hmm. They had organizations and they ran them like businesses, and there wasn't that many of them, 7, 8, or 9, and they kept order.
In Baltimore.
Into Baltimore, right. And so there was a lot of money, drug money on the streets, and black folks especially, we like the new Jordans. I was the new Jordans, right?
Right.
I was fresh.
I
was
still like
black.
my new Jordans.
Yeah, right. I ain't never owned a pair, man.
Oh, what? I got a bunch of them.
Yeah. But in any case, so I came out fast. I got off to a fast start. But one of the lesson I took from the effort to get out into that world and was blocked was when I was determined when I got out, and because there wasn't any certainty to it, I had a lot of insecurities. If I made it, I was going to provide for some other young black lawyers.
Do.
Right. So I'd get a suite. I'd get a suite with like 7 offices, and I'd have mine. I'd have my secretary or officer manager and some people out front, and then the other offices were for young black lawyers who were just coming out, trying to get into private practice. They didn't have to pay any rent. They didn't have to pay for a secretary, no phone, no nothing. And in fact, I would even ask them, and I'd pay them. You know, it was a few bucks to go cover a postponement or do this.
You
so
had a lot of postponement guys. I remember.
Yeah, and so it's amounted to about 22 lawyers that came through my office. They didn't have to pay nothing, and they went on to build their practices.
Right.
And some of them did the very same thing that I did. But that's just giving back, man. And I've never had a problem with that.
And you really haven't. And it's just, that was also amongst black people, that was your reputation as well. It's like, well, Warren Brown's always going to look out, and he's always going to do the right thing. That's what we used to talk about. Even when I was on the prosecutorial side, it's like you were this intimidating force, but you always treated people with respect, the other lawyers. You never talked down on anyone.
No.
And that, I think I learned from watching you and other people that's the way to be in this business.
Right.
And I think the clients,
That's right.
sometimes they want you to
Right.
punch the prosecutor in the mouth.
That's
that's
right.
not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, we over there laughing with the prosecutor for, man, because,
it's going to help you out.
I'm rocking him to sleep, man. He don't even know. I'm about to pick his pocket, right? If I go, with long face and all up in there, then he's guarded or she's guarded. Now, I want them to feel right at home because I'm playing the long game also.
Exactly.
It's not only your case, but I'm building a relationship with this person for other cases, yours and other cases down the road. And so, I've tried to do that, throughout history. I've come into contact with prosecutors that initially I was like, this is bitch, right? I said, no, just chill, and they act that way with me initially, and maybe the second time, maybe even the third time, but eventually I just kind of wear them down with kindness, and then I own them after that. I mean, so that's what it is. But and I know you got this question, but a couple things. When I got out to such quick success, and it showed, because when I was growing up, my old man used to say, you got a rich man's taste and a poor man's pocketbook, and he was right. There were things that I wanted, but couldn't dare to think about, being able to afford. But then when I got out and things were rocking and they were going, big time, man. The jewelers, the lawyers, the bail bondsmen, the private schools. We were sending our kids to private school on this drug money, right? The car dealers, everybody was making, a lot of money. And so it was showing with me. 9/11
How'd that affect
Turbo.
you?
What it was is I drew the suspicions of the powers that be. I had the feds had a tap on my phone.
Wow.
The state's attorney's office you had a grand jury going on. Right. Hochberg was her name. She later became a judge, a district court judge. She had an investigation of me going on.
Wow, really?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And it was, and I remember writing the federal prosecutor when I found out that she was the one behind getting the.
She never got arrested or charged with anything.
Oh hell no! She got the warrant, the tap on my phone, and so when I found that out,
a lawyer's phone. That's really something.
Yeah. Oh,
How do you get a warrant?
Well,
to tap a lawyer's
they said they
phone?
put up a Chinese wall, which was essentially. We're going to be not listening to any attorney-client conversations. Right, exactly. But I said, you'd have no shortage of people. If I was involved in my client's drug deal, you'd have no shortage of people coming and say, hey, Warren Brown, Warren Brown want to drive that 911 Porsche? Yeah, he out here, da-da-da-da-da. And even the federal judge Legg, who had signed off on it, I sent him a copy of the letter. And we, over the years, had donuts together at a particular bakery in Baltimore, in North Baltimore. But on the state side, they were looking also. And I remember a group of detectives that were working under her auspices came back and said, we didn't find anything on Warren Brown, but on Judge such and such. She said, I don't care about that, Judge. I want to know what's going on with Warren Brown.
Wow.
So and listen, even in our own community, there's people get jealous and the like, and it doesn't matter that you're supplying the neighborhood football team with uniforms or sending some girl to private school.
You were really rocking and rolling.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
You had the money. There's a lot of drug money on the streets back in the 80s and 90s. Did you ever fall prey to any of the ills of the drug game?
No, I remember because I tell younger lawyers, don't trust your clients. Because they'll turn on you in a minute. And I've had one guy called me on the phone, nonetheless, and said he had $100,000 and he needed me just to hold on to it. And I'm like, man, you're crazy. And I hung up. And I said that to him. I would have said to him, if we were buck naked in the gym, so I know he wasn't wearing a wire, I would say the same thing to him. Man, you're crazy. You really? That's not who I am. Right. And I would never, ever put everything that I've done on the line for something like that.
Right.
Really. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, it's deal with Rogues Gallery, man.
Wow. I mean, that is just, these are the things. I think, there's obviously drugs have not gone anywhere. They're still in our community. But I think when I listen to your stories, I think about the Wild, Wild West. And I think at that time, in the legal profession especially, it was the Wild West. I feel like it was new money, drug money, and it was flowing. And Baltimore is known in certain circles for that very thing, for those organizations. The Wire, a whole show was created,
right.
To depict that lifestyle.
Right.
But I know there are many other sides to the city as well. And I know you just did a recent feature in a magazine where you're like really Baltimore royalty, right? And they're like, you're not at the end of your career. You're just, you work because you want to work.
Right.
But I know that when I read the article, I didn't think I realized that another famous person from Baltimore is Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah,
and you were her stepfather for a time.
Yeah. I just come back from Memphis. I got out of law school in Boston, went down to Memphis, Tennessee for 3 years, Memphis in northern Mississippi. And I came back to Baltimore at the very end of 79. And her mom, who I knew briefly from high school, we ran into each other, and so we kicked it off and got it going, and we got married. And Jada and I, she was 5, and she was my heart. She really was. Wow. We used to hang, man. Her mom was in school, nursing school, and she'd be dealing with that, and Jada and I'd be on the road, man. We'd go up to Martha's Vineyard, New York City, down to Tidewater, down to Virginia Beach, and we did a lot together. We did a whole lot together, yeah.
So I'm 47, and I think I'm generally around the same age. She may be a little bit older than I am, but I know her first, obviously from her fame, right? And I remember her for the first time. I mean, she was that girl. We all, people from my generation, we loved her.
Right.
She was on a different world. It's the first time I remember her.
Right. Yeah. I remember she was in this little Twigs program, which is a precursor to the arts school, arts and science school here in Baltimore, School for the Arts. And she was in a little play they were doing, and you could see right from the beginning.
Right, I was going to ask you, because when did you know that she was destined for?
I mean, listen, early on. I mean, she used to practice her autograph, right?
Wow.
And so she was in the midst of singing "Over the Rainbow," and she kind of forgot some of the lyrics, and rather than just fall apart, because she's like 13, 12, 14 years old, 13 or 12 years old, she enticed the audience. Come on, got the audience singing, and then the words came back to her head, and she was off to the races. So she's always had that innate talent. There was no question that she had the ability, but it was also luck as well. I mean,
right.
There's a lot of talent out there. My friend used to say, it's not who's the strongest, it's who's the strongest the longest. And so there's a lot of talent, but people just give up along the way.
Right. And I think in the legal profession is the same thing. It's like you said earlier, it's the long game.
Yeah, it's the long game.
It's like who
Absolutely.
can stay here the longest. At the end of the day, who's the last man or woman standing?
That's correct.
So not to keep talking about Jada, because
that's all right.
It's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Now this is the lawyer's hip hop happy hour. So I'm gonna try to draw a parallel with Jada Pinkett Smith. Now I know that Tupac is her buddy. Mm-hmm. So my next question is, did you ever meet Tupac, or did you ever see them together?
In fact, when Tupac came into the picture, her mom and I had separated. Okay. She was in high school by then. And her mom and I had separated, and so I never encountered him. Let me put it this way: I may have encountered him, but he was just another kid, right? Because even after her mom and I separated, Jada and I remained really close. She'd come stay with me, and so she'd have a party at my house.
You were the cool stepdad.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, we
used to be cool. Look at you see the camera like right now. You're the cool guy.
I was just going with the flow, right? And so he may have been at one of those parties that I would have for her. Right. Nobody knew him at that point in time.
Exactly, and he was not from Baltimore. He had come
there.
Yeah,
I think
to go to school
down from New York.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a really awesome and cool story. Now you. Obviously have been practicing law a long time, and you talked about some of the legal giants that influenced you. Mm-hmm. But did you have anyone in your family? Like, how did you get to the point of becoming a lawyer?
I'll tell you, it wasn't that I thought at that moment about being a lawyer, but what it instilled in me was a sense of right and wrong and justice. As mentioned in that article, I remember my mom and I, I'm about 10, 11 years old, Edmund Pettus Bridge crossing, and they're beating, and they got these dogs going after these people.
Living in the civil rights movement at its peak.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was still segregation was still legal in Maryland. It was illegal all over the country, but in Maryland especially. And so we're sitting in a little dark room watching black and white TV, and the dogs are attacking the hose. You see the black and white.
Right, I've seen that. It's very famous footage.
And I remember asking my mom, I said, Mom, why are those colored people making so much trouble? And she snapped at me. She said, they're not. They're just fighting for their rights. And listen, I'm 72, so that stayed with me the last 60-something years, right? And it was just that moment, and after that it was just what's right and what's wrong, how do you treat people, how you shouldn't treat people, right. And that was a easy foray into the practice of law, because it gave me an opportunity, to help people to push back. That's one of the things about being a criminal defense attorney I enjoy. I enjoy standing, especially in federal court, because of the might of the federal government.
Right.
I enjoy standing between the might of the government and this, this prostitute or whoever it is
right.
that's behind me, and it's just little me, right? Exactly. They got tanks, they got neutron bombs, they got it all, man. But they can't get to this person but through me and that jury. And I let the jury know that all the time too. I said, with all the might of the government, they can't get to this person but through you 12. Now that's power there. So I've enjoyed being in that position where I can push back on them and say, no, you got to get it right first. You got to get it right first.
So it always fascinates me. My parents are a little bit older than you. My dad, he's still alive, and he's in his late 70s, but he was in his teenage years, in his 20s, when all this stuff that you're talking about was going on. But you still grew up and clearly remember living in a segregated world. Like, yeah, you all are the last generation to do that.
That's right.
I mean, I can't even imagine. I didn't grow up like that. Yeah. I was the next generation, but I didn't grow up like that. I can't imagine
the worst part about it. It was a lot of worst parts about it. So this is one of the worst parts about it, was seeing the change of your father when we left our community and would go into the white community, white shopping area or wherever, not living area. We weren't going there. And to see where he had to kind of change his approach to people, right? He had to suppress, some of his natural abilities and instincts, because we were around these white folks, and he was, again, segregation was legal. But in the community out there on the field with all us, he was a strong black man. But then it was he didn't cower, but he lost some of that that zeal and that energy and that enthusiasm, and that was not lost. That wasn't lost on us, and so but we made it through. I'm glad I'm glad that I lived for a brief period of time, 10 or 12 years, where those conditions existed, so I'd have a very firm appreciation for where things are now, and a deep-seated feel that I'll do whatever I have to do to fight against ever going back to something like that.
I can't even imagine growing up and living like that, but it shouldn't be lost on people that you grew up in segregation when it was legal, on the books, lawful, and then it ended one day, quote unquote, and then you still live with the same people who it was legal with 5 minutes ago. So your treatment couldn't have been that much better. Your opportunities weren't that much better.
I mean, it didn't. Right, things didn't change. Things didn't change overnight, right? But it's like water weighing down a rock. I mean, it takes time, but that water's going to win out over that rock. And they can't keep us back. They can't keep us down. We're going to make it through. They're going to take out a lot of us. I mean, but you have to understand that, we like to think that they went to the, west coast of Africa and grabbed a few of us off the beach. They went to the interior of Africa, put us in chains, and they brought us to the coast. And all of them didn't make it. It was an arduous journey.
Many people didn't make it.
Right. And so,
can you imagine that? You have a wife, a daughter, a
and
mother,
they got you in chains, and they're
taking you away.
Right. And hundreds of miles to a coast. Then they pick over you like, many of them died, and those that didn't, they picked over like their fruit in a market or something, right? And they boarded them on ships, and all of them didn't make it. Exactly. So the ones that made it were the strongest of the strong. It's in our DNA, man, to survive. We cleaned the intestines of pigs, and made it a delicacy.
Exactly.
We've been through things that nobody in our generation, people have been through in terms of overcoming. Because remember,
over hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years. When I was, like I said, 65, 64, 65, 66, Voters' Right, Public Accommodations Act, during Johnson's administration, that's the first time that they outlawed segregation in public, in the public
and
arena.
you're alive.
Yeah.
So we live in an Instagram, social media, TikTok world where people are just living in like nothing. There's no problems.
Right.
Nothing.
Exactly. And this is what, with 35, this is 50, about 60 years ago.
Right.
Where 60 years ago.
That's not a long time ago.
You get killed trying to go vote in some places, right? But in these mere 60 years.
Look how much we've done.
Wow. Who could do it, man? I mean, with presidents of universities, corporations. I remember, what was it? The American
Lawyers,
Express.
doctors.
Chanel, CEO, presidents of Brown University, sister up there. I mean, and the government, presidents, governors, all over. I mean, because that's in the face
and
of
yet
their
they say
efforts.
We're lazy.
Yeah, right. Well, they're always going to try to create that narrative. But no, man, we come from good stock, and we're gonna keep making it. And they're gonna take us out. Yeah.
We're not going anywhere.
And that's another drive that I have in the criminal justice field, because there was a time in the 50s and 60s where if you could pick that box up and put it on the shelf, you get a job. They didn't care about whether you had a criminal record or not. But once they allowed us to vote, once we started voting in numbers and things began to change, they said we got to put something in the way. Can't be race anymore because this legislation that's passed. So what will we do? Okay, I'll tell you what. It has nothing to do with race. If you have a criminal record, you can't rent this apartment, can't have this job, can't have this college scholarship. And so that's why I fight so hard in many of my cases where it's most appropriate to try to get this off my client's record, because I know the impact that it has.
Right.
And so the criminal justice system has been arm of resistance to us since we got here.
I mean, we had one of our guests, shout out to Brandy Harden, talking about the 13th Amendment and its effect on our people throughout the years since it's been since it was ratified by the United States government. And yet, like to your point, we still here. We are leaders of industry, entertainment, sports.
Right.
And we're a very small minority of the population, but we have an outsized effect in so many ways,
and
positive effects.
Yeah. And it's not lost on white America. I tell these kids, I try to go out and talk to them in the schools, and I let them know, listen, they got greater respect for you all than sometimes you have for yourself. They have a greater, they know the power that is inherent in you. They know that because they can look over the history. What they're afraid of and bothered by, listen, if I had a dog on a chain and I mistreated that dog, kicked that dog, hit him with rocks and tree limbs all the time, I would be afraid if that dog got off the leash. Right. And I don't think they've ever gotten over their guilt or their fear of us coming off the leash.
Right.
And they always are waiting for us just to explode on them, because it's such a guilt that is associated with the way they treated us. And then they have to look around and see successful people like you and the brother here, and it bothers them. Because let me tell you something, it diminishes that one thread, that one thing they can hold on to, and that is, no matter how bad I am, I ain't a black person.
Right.
Now they see black folk doing the thing, dominating.
Given the opportunity, or without the opportunity, we're going to do well.
That's right. And so they've lost that sense of whiteness. And that's what that whole mega thing is. They take us back to where, even if I was a pig farmer in Itabena, Mississippi, I'm white.
Right.
Slopping pigs, but I'm white.
Right.
And that's better than any of them. But they've lost that. And that's what they want to get back to, that feeling of inherent superiority, which they lost.
Wow, that's really powerful words that you've just spoken. And I, I'm glad that you said it, because it needs to be said. Not enough people say it. Before we conclude our interview today, I want to make sure because you have lots, as trial lawyers, we have lots of stories, right?
Yeah, man.
And I know you've got more stories than you can remember.
I know.
But I would just,
Crazy.
For those of us who are listening, the other lawyers, young lawyers, old lawyers, law students, whoever, can you remember, and I think I have an idea what you might say, but I would like to hear, what do you think one of your most memorable cases was or is?
Oh, man, it's two, and maybe three. I guess the first one was 24 years, 23 years ago. It was 22 years ago, and right the year after 9/11. My client, who was in his early 20s, came upon his former priest, saw him, and he shot him. Shot him 3 times.
He shot a priest of the Catholic Church?
Priest, yeah, Bishop, Showell, the Catholic Church. Weren't that many, Catholic priests.
Now, is the priest African American?
Yes. Okay. And in fact, he was one of a very few in the region. And he would even have these Afrocentric services, Catholic services with the kente robe and the like.
And he was shot by
my client, who, when he was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, this priest abused and sexually abused.
How old was he when he shot him?
He was in his 20s.
Okay.
And then in the interim, what happened was he going to school, having problems, tells the counselor contacts, which they are obligated to do, contact the police about this allegation of child sex abuse by the priest on this little boy. They get involved. They do an extensive investigation. I eventually got the case folder, turned it over to the state attorney's office, who at that time I think was Stu Sims. I think Smoke had gone on to become mayor.
So the prosecution got the
file. They got the file on this notable celebrity, black, one of only few priests in the city. And they refused to do anything with it.
Wow.
The Catholic Church sent him up to Connecticut for a 90-day deprogramming or whatever, and they brought him right back.
Wow.
So years later, and we all had suspicions, but no one would say it back then. Okay, everybody was talking about priests, touchy-feely with these little boys, but nobody would say it. They're a priest, right? Then there was the brouhaha, the big explosion investigation up in Boston. I think they did a movie on it. I think called Spotlight. And so now, what everybody knew and suspected was out in the open, that there's massive abuse, child abuse, sexual child abuse being perpetrated. So now Dontee is in his early 20s when this is all out and everybody's talking about it. So he sees the priest, and he says, "Hey, Father Blackwell, now you ready to apologize me?
Right.
I mean, it's out now. We know y'all do this. How about me giving me an apology? You wouldn't do it before because you didn't want to be suspected." And he gave him the bird.
Wow.
Dontee pulled out a gun and shot him 3 times.
Did he kill him?
No, he didn't kill him, but he heard him. He bested him because it was .357, and it was close range. He shot him 3 times. He left, drove off, went around the corner to a church, buried the gun, went in and confessed to this preacher that was there. They arrested him, told you where the gun was. So when the family got in touch with me, I knew that in an effort to defend Dontee, I was going to put the priest obviously on. I was going to prosecute him while they prosecuted my client.
Right.
The state's attorney's office, I was going to prosecute them because they knew about it and didn't do anything about it. And then the Catholic Church, I was going to put them on trial. And so that was my goal. And I even had the.
So you knew he did. There was no question.
Oh, there's no question. When they arrested him, he told him. He told him where the gun was. And so it was dead up, and I knew that there would be a lot of sympathies, but you can't rely on jury nullification, right? You need
jury
something.
Nullification is when you tell the jury to basically feel sorry for your client.
Feel sorry for him, let him go, even though he did do it.
Kind of like what you just mean that prostitution case. It worked.
Well, in this one, it worked as well. But I knew I needed something. So when I got his charge papers, I'm reading through all of this. It's nothing good, all blah, blah. They get a dead up case. But at the very end, the detective says he told them I felt like I was outside of my body watching myself pull that trigger. And I knew that's all I needed. I just needed something to give to the jury so it wasn't truly jury nullification. And so I listened to it. It was all over the airways, New York Times. I was on the front page of the New York Times.
Wow.
For this trial, New York Times, LA Times, Chicago Tribune. All of them were covering this.
Is a big deal.
It's a big deal. And this was a game because now it's out in the open that priests are doing these things to these kids. And so they covered it extensively. So long story short, listening to the talk shows, the men would say, "Yeah, what that priest did to that boy, man, that was wrong."
So you actually paid attention to the pretrial publicity.
Yeah, it was a lot of it. It was national. It really was. And the men were like, "Yeah, he shouldn't have done it to that boy, but man, you just can't go shoot somebody." But the women, they were like, good.
Right.
And so I knew.
I love women jurors.
Yeah,
by
man,
the way.
I knew I needed women on my
best.
jury.
I like women voters,
Yeah,
women jurors.
yeah.
Women save the world.
Yeah,
by the way.
I'm telling you, man, your world would be a much better place if it was run by all women. But
I agree.
so I had 11 women and one male on my jury.
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
11 women. So
they
you managed
found
to get all the men off
They
the
found
jury.
him not guilty of everything except possession of the handgun, which he got probation for. And
Wow.
and this is the only
So
time.
he was facing a life sentence. right?
Yes. Yeah, Judge Cox was the prosecutor, Sylvester.
Wow. Judge Cox, who's an African-American judge in Baltimore.
Circuit Court judge now.
Wow.
But the interesting thing, it's the only trial where I had a jury when they found not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, guilty of the possession of a handgun. They also sent a note asking the judge for leniency on him. It was Judge Priebus. So that was the most notable. Yeah, I mean, there's some others that go on
That's
and on
really...
and on, man. But and Dontee, he's doing good, you know. But I was really bothered by it that this person would take. Oh, and then I ended up getting Blackwell indicted. He didn't want to. I was beaten down on Pat Jessamy, who was the prosecutor, state's attorney at the time, as I now remember. And she had come in, and I was trying to get Blackwell indicted for what he had done to Dontee. Right, but they said, well, statute of limitations. So we found another brother who he had abused, living down in New Orleans, down in Baton Rouge. And he'd grown up here. He got away as soon as high school. He went into the Navy to get away from all of this craziness. Even though the preacher, the priest had stopped messing with him because he got a little too old, right? Like 14, 15, a little too old. But it was just horrible. And so we got him back, and we ended up getting the priest. He got defrocked because they didn't like him. But he got indicted. Ravenel represented him. And they lost the trial, filed a motion for a new trial. The state didn't even respond because Jessamy probably said don't. And so the judge threw the case out. So it's a lot. It's been a lot.
I mean, it is such an interesting profession, and this is something that you don't know who's going to walk into your door each day, and it could be the case of a lifetime. And I know you've had a lot of cases of a lifetime. Yeah,
I have. And you know what's interesting? I have to catch myself because like many of us, we'll hear about a crime that's been committed. It's all over the news. Some kid goes up into a school and shoots everybody. And I said, I'm angry like the public, right? Then I have to stop myself. Whoa now, because he might end up being your client. So, so
I don't want to get too angry.
Yeah, I don't want to get too angry. So keep an open mind now.
That's what I tell juries all the time, to keep an open mind.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, you got 12 strangers that you have very little information about.
Right.
And,
very
and
little.
So
information.
you just try to
make that connection.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things I've learned to do though is leave my ego outside the courtroom because we're on a stage in there. It's very easy to get too cutesy. And even the way you dress. When I'm on the Eastern Shore, I don't have any boutonniere. I don't.
So the Eastern Shore of Maryland, more conservative out there.
More conservative, right? Any bling I might have ordinarily have had on, I take off. And so it's really kind of like reading your audience.
Right, you have to know your audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I've learned that being a trial attorney as well.
Yes.
Well, you are the man, the myth, and the legend.
I don't know.
You are, and I know you have short time to be with us because of our parking situation here in DC. But so before we finish the interview completely, we want to get to the music stuff.
Yes.
So we're going to close out this portion of our interview. I want to thank you again for coming down. Stick around for part 2. We got part 2 coming.
Right, I got you.
The fun part.
Right.
and we got some great records on the table that you can hopefully bless us about some more good stories about.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for this first portion of this interview. It was
I
awesome.
appreciate it. Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely.
It's great to have you.
Yeah, no doubt. Good to be here.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. Please subscribe to this podcast. It's available everywhere, including Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. New episodes are released on the 12th of each month, and if you'd like to see the video version of any interview, they can be found on my YouTube page at the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you on the B-side.